Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Matty B. And I will say, Matt, a lot of people liked the show last week. I got a lot of texts from people that I didn't even know listened to the show, just because of the negativity and the curse talk. And the Christian McCaffrey thing. A lot of people hate that commercial. I look good? Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm very surprised to hear from some people that I didn't expect to. But we might as well start with you guys. You had your playoff game. You want to fill us in on how that went?
Well, we'll just call it missed opportunities because we ended up getting bounced out of the playoffs in the first round. It was a 1 o'clock Saturday afternoon game, which was obnoxious because the school that we played didn't have lights. And I just thought, it's 2021. Like, have a bake sale. Get yourself some lights. Join the rest of modern society. We don't even have a field right now. But come on. At least have lights.
And I'm surprised. And that's what I talk about. Like, when high schools, they might not have the facilities or whatever. As schools continue to cut costs for, like, athletics, it's much easier just to have indoor activities as your sports, you know, like throw a couple computers together, have a video game room instead of having like an outdoor light. But let's be real. I've played at some small town baseball fields that had lights. So you can't tell me that a high school football team can't raise enough money to have their own lights. So I agree with you on that.
And, you know, I kind of tipped my cap because the team that we played, they weren't even, like, you joked with me a lot about our offense and how the core base of it is an older style offense. But the team that we played ran an even older version of an offense because they were foot to foot, double tight, double wing. And their field, like literally down the middle of the field, was just a swamp of mud. And they just ran it. They were just used to playing on grass. So I think us playing our games on turf this year definitely came back to bite us because we had some issues with footing, and it just felt like they were just gliding across the mud, and we couldn't get our footing. So,
well, you brought up the offenses, and I was going to tell you, but I need to figure out how to get live TV set up, like Rewind, because my TV has, like, if you plug a USB drive in, it will let you record. But I don't remember which game I was watching. It was a college game on Saturday. But the announcer said, I haven't seen a play like that since the old wing T offenses. And I was like, oh, my God. I wish I could record that clip and just play it for the show for you.
But, I mean, we had some things set up that you know, when you draw it up, you're like, if this happens, this could be a really big play. And we had the exact looks we wanted, and just uncharacteristic. We dropped some touchdown passes, had a couple big plays called back, and just overall wasn't our day. So it was unfortunate, but now I have more time to dedicate to the show.
Well, I was going to tell you or ask you, what's your plan for the off season now?
Well, there's the big thing is always just looking at going back through some of those older films from the season and just seeing like what needs to be changed. There's always like little tweaks within the offense, and I look at like what things did we do that we didn't execute well, because there's always some things that, like, when you look at it, it's like, I like certain plays, but if I like them, but we're not executing, we're not moving the ball with it, then why keep it in the playbook? And I've always looked at if you put something new in, because the off season's always a crazy time where, like, you have access to different clinics and different people are posting things, and everyone's schemes look really good, and it's very easy to go down a rabbit hole of, well, I'm going to add this, and I'm going to add this, and then pretty soon you don't have an identity. So a good rule that Mike Leach had always brought up was, if you put something in, what comes out? And, you know, when you look at what stuff you have, if if you're going to add a new play, or you're going to add, that's practice time that you have to dedicate to perfecting it. So if you're putting something new in, then something old has to come out, and it may just be replacing one play for another, or like a way that you're blocking it, and those things add up in terms of practice time.
Yeah, one of the NFL games they were talking about the originator of the quarterback armband. There's only so much room to write plays on that, so you'd almost have to erase a couple if you're putting new ones on there.
Absolutely. And it was funny because I did have a meeting as we were turning our equipment in with the underclassmen to kind of just go over expectations for the off season and when I was going to be officially starting back up with the weight room and different stuff like that. And I just kind of asked point blank, was like, is there anything that we can kind of get better with? And they're like, yeah, I don't think we all need the wristbands, because quarterback just comes in the huddle and tells us to play anyhow. So we don't all need them. This is a dagger right in my heart.
How many people did you have with the wristband? Because I would have only thought the quarterback had them.
Well, everyone on the team had them, but it was like if you were out on offense, you had that way. If the potential for going up tempos right there, we just call it off the band, and then everyone knows what play we're running.
That's probably a good idea. There's probably not a lot of high tempo offenses in high school.
Well, you got to be careful running a high tempo offense, because if you're not moving the ball and it's just like pass, punt, and you've taken no time off the clock, you could easily end up being like that team in California that had 106 points scored on them.
I thought you were going to say because you only have like 20-something guys, so the faster you go, the more tired your team is. You can't sub them out.
That could potentially happen, but I think what we've seen is like I try to go more up tempo with the way we run our practice, just because a lot of our players are very hands on, and if they're not involved in the reps and they're not doing it, then they're not paying attention, and so you want to maximize how many times they're seeing a play. So there are certain periods that you just try to go a lot faster and get them in and out of formations and in and out of play, so that they're getting as many times running those certain plays as you can.
Yeah, reps definitely matter whenever you're trying to put new stuff in. So,
and plus, I hate just lining up on a line and just running like sprints for no reason. Like I think.
Wait, you yourself or having your team do that?
Both. I think it's stupid for me to line up and run sprints. Almost 40 years old.
Oh, I forgot how old you are. Wow. Damn, dude.
Yeah. It's like I really don't need to be lined up running sprints. But even for the kids, like there a lot of the research that has come out has shown that there's better ways of getting yourself conditioned. And I've been really happy this season that one of my personal team goals was to reduce the amount of lower body injuries. And after looking at the last couple seasons, we had so many ankle injuries and different things like that it's apparent that the changes that we did in our weight program and the way that we conditioned for the season, we didn't have that wear and tear that I saw on the kids in previous years. Because in changing some of the sprints, like we cut out a lot of post practice or even like mid practice sprints and different things like that, and just built it into tempo of plays and periods of just running our offense on air or on like running routes and things that are more within the scheme of like playing the game, so that they were still doing, like they were involved with doing football related things, as opposed to, and now here we're just going to condition for the sake of conditioning. Yeah.
I mean, that's something that I've always thought about, and we've talked about it on the show, because I noticed it with some of the college teams, like even Jim Harbaugh in Michigan. Whenever you're losing the last 4 games of the year because everyone's hurt and like your team just looks tired, you know it's conditioning. Like changing up conditioning coaches, is that going to matter if your practices are still hitting each other? And like full contact practices all season long. And that's the one thing that, like, if he's going to, I mean, we're going to have the Scott Frost talk later in the show. He took a cut similar to what Harbaugh took, but are you going to be able to make those changes to stop that from happening? Like, can you look at your program and say, I need to make conditioning changes or whatever? So, I'm glad you're doing that, because like the injury thing, I even had on the show as like a subtopic some of the injury data I saw the NFL putting out, and I was interested to see, because it felt like this year they have more injuries, but I really couldn't tell. But we'll get into that here in a second. Do you have anything else for your team?
I just overall, and I've said it in some of my other interviews and things like that, but I was just really proud of our team this year, because going in, we weren't really sure how well we were going to be, and to get back to the playoffs was something that we had set as a goal, and I was really proud of the kids to be able to do that. And with the way some of the earlier games went in the year, it was like the potential to lose the team was definitely a possibility, and I was proud that they hung together, and we had that leadership still hanging in place, so that these next couple of years should be very bright for our program.
Yeah, very cool. I mean, you've been there how many years?
This just finished year 4.
Yeah, I was going to say, it usually takes 4 years or so to get your program in place, and that's why with high schools you see coaches move around so many like shortened years, and they have one successful year, jump to another program, and then they tank. And it's like, what are you doing? Like, you don't have that identity. And then you see some other programs that build that identity, and then they're solid for 20 years. The coach never leaves, and then they go on runs. I mean, like the school you're at, they had trouble even making the playoffs. So, I mean, you sounded down about a first round exit. They weren't even sniffing the playoffs. So like, just getting there consecutive years and like multiple years as a head coach while you're there, like that's a very big success for them. Like, I even joked about the fans in the stands happy about like the 2-win season or 3 wins, whatever it was, when I was at the game this year. It's like, yeah, you guys made it back to the playoffs anyway with some upset wins. So,
and I think it's one of those that for us, like, just like the conversations that we have off air, there's this competitiveness within our family that I think not a lot of other people have. And
really, I have people complain about my competitiveness all the time.
but I mean that, like, we are competitive, but I don't think that other people are are at that level. So like where other people are able to look at, you know, this 4-7 record and say, well, that's just outstanding. Like, for us, it's like, you got to be kidding. Like, we could have did, and you always go back and you look at there's certain plays that, well, if this happened or if we do this, then, you know, this changes the outcome of a couple different games, and like you beat yourself up about the stuff that you can't really change. But that's what makes it competing and playing so much fun, is that there's always stuff to improve on, and we'll keep working on the next version of this team and see where it goes.
And high school is different too, because you don't have control over the athletes. So like in college, if you were going into year 4 and you're having a downward spiral, which we're going to talk about with Scott Frost I mentioned earlier, then there are issues where you have to make some changes. But like in high school, as long as you're building that identity and getting kids excited about coming out, I mean, realistically, I had some stats like Bill Belichick's under 500 without Tom Brady as a head coach. People think he's great. Like, and then our man Mike Tomlin hasn't won a playoff game in 5 years, Matt. So as long as, I think it was 5 years, they said during the game last night, but as long as you're getting there, people will be happy. So, good luck. Have fun with your off-season program. I was going to mention, like, I haven't mentioned about me running, trying to stay in shape, but I need to start bringing it up more on the show to hold myself accountable, because I started to switch into like lifting weights, because I haven't lifted weights in, God, who knows how many years. But like my hand has just been hurting, like my grip. And I'm like, I need to start lifting some weights again. So I kind of rotated off running. And so now I'm trying to mix them both back in. I did sign up for a 5K this month to try to keep myself going. Like running, I know just stopping for, I think, 2 weeks now is going to be bad for my time. But I haven't stopped working as I've been lifting weights. So we'll see if I can keep that going. Because I mentioned earlier in the summer, like last winter, you go to like holidays and you're like, I'll work out. Let me just take a day here or there. And then next thing you know, it's like 3 months later and you're like, oh my gosh, I guess I should sign up for a run or something to stay in shape. So I'll be checking in because I need to hold myself accountable. Otherwise I won't do it. But let's get into my first topic. Braves, they won the World Series last Tuesday. While we were recording, they had a bunch of home runs and I thought, man, if they choke this game away, because I didn't know how much their pitching was going to be affected. You lose your starting pitcher to the broken leg, and then that throws off your entire rotation. So I wasn't going to start bragging on the show or talking trash because who knows? But they were able to get it done. Did you see the parade?
No.
They showed it on the Steelers halftime, I think, last night, where whoever was driving the float, he's flying through Atlanta, Matt. Like you think it's like a parade where like the guys are going, he's probably hitting 35, 40 miles an hour, like just flying by. People are like, wait. And I'm thinking, what if a player, and I know my speeds are probably off, but look at the video if you think I'm exaggerating, because they made fun of it on Monday Night Football. And I thought, man, could you imagine if I drove, like I'm going to drive and watch the Braves parade. And then it's like, oh, that was fast. Dunzo. And I know that wasn't the only car there. Or at least I hope it wasn't. But man, players, could you imagine if a player fell off the float? Like, there's like a 26-year curse. I think I have the years right. Hopefully I wrote it down. But I did have, people were, they liked the curse talk, like I mentioned at the top of the show. And, I mean, to be honest, maybe we'll start talking about the Braves more on the show. But other people that were calling me out for the Pirates stuff and the Penguins, because I know the Penguins won some Stanley Cups. As I said, all my teams have been losing recently. But I'm talking about years of turmoil with the Braves. And the Penguins kind of got lucky when they got Sid and Malkin, and then they've had their run. It's like you can't be mad about that. But the Braves had their run, and they were choking. So imagine if that Penguins team, if you had like an Ovechkin type run where he's only won like one cup, right?
Yeah.
Like that's kind of what the Braves were like. They had the pitching, they had the roster, and yet they watched the Marlins win 2 World Series. And it was like they couldn't put it together. And the Pirates would point that out and be like, hey, the Braves have everything right and they can't win. So let us rebuild our own way. But this is in the face of the Pirates now, because you can't tell me that the Pirates can't put together a roster like the Braves. All they did is trade, like sign some guys. They made some moves. Hell, the MVP, I think they acquired him at the trade deadline from like Kansas City of the World Series. Like the Pirates don't make moves like that. They bring in like Chris Archer. You don't mess with the rotation, really. You got to do that in the off season. You got to bring in some bats. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I can't remember the last time like a big name pitcher is acquired at the trade deadline that actually pushed the team over the top. Maybe one of the Pirates pitchers going somewhere because they feed in like a minor league team. But that's the difference between the teams. You got to be willing to at least spend money and rebuild. The Braves had just rebuilt. When was that year? It was like 5 or 6 years ago they lost to the Cardinals in the play-in game, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if we watched it together. I can't remember, but I know it was
October.
like... Yeah, it was around the same time as Bucktober. And so the Braves completely rebuild. Pirates, guess what? Still rebuilding. Like, you're on a 10-year plan. You can at least try to do the Pirates thing. So I understand if Pittsburgh people are mad about me talking about the Braves, but you get a little bit more diversity on the show if I talk about them going forward. So we'll see. Get into the NFL now. Aaron Rodgers, I've been talking about him in connection with Pittsburgh, and guess what, Matt? He probably would fit right in with the Yinzers. out there. He's fined now for his catching coronavirus. And I just want to point out, because we talked about the NFL and how like their media and stuff hide stuff. They attack John Gruden, right? Then say, hey, we're not going to actually release the emails. Which if you're him, you have to feel like shit. Because at least you'd want them out in the open, right?
Yeah.
Instead of, hey, here's a hit piece by the newspaper. And oh, by the way, the NFL is not even going to release them. So they can't even see the context of them. How do you know, like, it wasn't some other owner that had started the thread and John Gruden's kind of just laughing along? Like, we don't know. We don't know. I think the fans deserve to know, like, what's going on. Same with the Packers thing here. So they're fined $300,000, and Aaron Rodgers and Alan Lazard, I think, were the two that were fined for their coronavirus stuff. Aaron Rodgers said he was whatever the word is, but he didn't say he was vaccinated. And I think everyone just assumed that he was because he wasn't wearing a mask. That's the whole point of the protocols. And then he called them out after, saying that it wasn't backed in science. And it's like, they just kind of brushed it under the rug now. Like, I think if you're going to continue to have these protocols in place, like, do they mean anything at this point? If he's just going to play next week and he was not wearing a mask or whatever, because, I mean, he's not vaccinated now. So should he be wearing a mask now? I don't know what their rules are, but what I'm seeing is a lot of hypocrisy from the NFL. You can't have rules for some teams and some players, but not others. Like, same with players that get in trouble with the law. It's like, oh yeah, so-and-so, you can come back. Tyreek Hill, no big deal. You're still playing. Like, how many incidents you have off the field, it's cool. Ruggs killed that person. It's like, what are you doing? You're getting in a high-speed race? Like, what's wrong with you? I don't know. The NFL is like a mess. Like, you would think that they would try to put some stuff in paper and just be like, these are the rules and that's it.
But I almost think it seems like they're trying to do that with when they're having that like rookie symposium and they're bringing people in and doing all that stuff to like try to help them acclimate to the league, but it's just not working.
One of the teams cut a person and they were like, oh yeah, we knew that they were probably going to be cut. I can't remember the guy's name, because after he got drafted, he wrecked 4 different rental cars. I don't think it was Ruggs. I think it was someone else. So some other player wrecked 4 different rental cars, had some off the field issues, but they were like, you know what? We're going to keep you around just to see, because your talent might work out. And so I think that's what the problem is. Like, hey, if you have off the field stuff, like, wasn't it Aldon Smith with the 49ers? Constantly getting in trouble. Then he's like with the Cowboys years later. He's like in and out of prison. It's like, why? Like, why? You can't tell me, like, I know he has talent, but like at some point you got to say, hey, it's bad for the league to have you here. But now they're going after Aaron Rodgers, and it's like, the Packers, what a difference without him. So everyone's been talking about how this is his last year in Green Bay. Oof, that's going to be bad if he leaves. That team was not looking good. And I know that they played the Chiefs tight. Chiefs have not looked good all year. The Chiefs still look like a mess. Mahomes looks completely shook. I don't know if Tom Brady broke him in that Super Bowl, but wow, that team is garbage. Like, if Pittsburgh matched up with them in the playoffs, I'd be like, oh my God, Pittsburgh might win a playoff game. That's how bad the Chiefs look. And I don't know if they're going to be able to turn it around. Like, that Packers team did not look good. Did you see that game?
Yeah, I saw parts of it. I thought the defense played really well for Green Bay, but it was just like the offense couldn't capitalize on anything. One of the things that I saw that was, I think, absolutely insane was that they had an interview with Mahomes, and he was talking about how just like recently, like within the last couple of years, he learned how to read defenses. It's like he was just going out and just playing backyard football and earning like $500 million a year on a contract.
But I think that's messed with them. Like, I think teams realized he was doing that and started to just disguise coverages, because look how many turnovers they have this year. Yeah. And him speaking on it only makes it worse. I mean, even the last play of the game to seal it, where he just ran around and threw one downfield to Hill. I mean, if the defender made a break on that, that could have easily been intercepted as well. I think that it was just the end of game. They were trying to just make sure that he didn't break a long touchdown and put it away. But at that point, it's like, you got to know that they're going to try to go to the sticks. And I mean, to be honest, like, looking how bad they looked. And then the Browns offense doesn't look much better. I mean, OBJ, what's up with him? He came back from his injury. He's looked like trash. Do you think anyone's going to sign him?
I think somebody will. I mean, I was surprised.
Let me look and make sure no one signed him after. I don't know if it was last night the thing came out.
Green Bay's potentially looking at him.
Because their offense looked like trash. Like, you only signed him for like a 1-year deal. No, he was unclaimed. Okay. So the Browns could still sign him back. Could you imagine? It's like, hey, you're locker room cancer, but we'll take that cancer for $2 million instead of 4 or whatever they had it at. It's like, why would you do that? Actually, go ahead, Browns. Do it. Because now I'm not even worried, like, for the Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh might have a chance. I know Ben hasn't been completely solid, but Harris is starting to come around. And as long as the defense keeps performing, well, Devin Bush, my man, he had some bad reads. Even on the touchdown where they ran that Wildcat thing, like, he bit on it really hard. And I know he was injured and out, but he got to pick up the pace. And I think some of the other players on that defense, if they can start to react better, look out. Because Pittsburgh's right there. They're only a game behind Baltimore right now in the division. And, with injuries all around the league, that's what made me look it up. The NFL puts out injury data. This is what they release: concussions, ACL, MCL. So, like, that's the data that they put out. Like, I don't know why they focus only on those, because, there's going to be other injuries. But in terms of concussions, it's only half season or whatever. But it seems like it's down this year. And to be honest, it should be. They should be making strides in helmets or whatever. Concussions should go down every year. ACL tears are about the same. And then same with MCL. So concussions might be a little bit down. We'll see at the end of the year. I'll bookmark this right now so that I have it. But they have the injury report since 2015. And they're all around the same, like between 80, 90 injuries. And if you combine everything with the preseason, you're looking at like 100, 130, 100 to 130. 2015 was the worst for like MCL tears with 160. But then like concussions, it's been going down every year pretty much, 275 down. There was a blip in 2017 where they had 281. But it's been hovering around 200 now. So if this year is about the same, like, they'll just keep going down, and maybe they can actually get rid of them. I don't know if football can ever stop them, but the injury, for as much high-profile injuries there's been this year, it's not out of line with what's been in the past. So I was surprised with that data, so I just wanted to bring that in. Any other games stood out to you this week?
No, there weren't any games per se. Just agitated that once again the Jets quarterback got hurt early in the game and cost me my fantasy week, because last week I had my quarterback get hurt, well, Jameis. Now this week I thought, I'll pick up one in free agency and I'll be able to be all right. And then he gets hurt and the backup goes for a gazillion points.
Oh, yeah, he did have that hell of a game.
So had my guy not got hurt, those could have been his points, and I definitely would have handedly won.
Well, we don't know if the other quarterback might have just been better. Because I was wondering.
He started off, he completed every pass into a touchdown and then hurt his forearm. And he couldn't grip the ball.
I missed the beginning of the game. I don't know how early you heard it. But I will say
it was awesome.
I was going to talk about the Jets players because I thought they might be worth a pickup last week. And then I'm like, I don't know, because then you look like an idiot. Because with Zach Wilson going down, you don't know how the backup quarterback's even going to play. And they played well. And so normally I would tell you to run and pick them up. But that second week in the NFL, now that they have film on that guy, yikes, look out. I bet there's a big drop off for the Jets offense. But I don't know. That's just my prediction. So if you see some of those high stat lines, just kind of be weary. McCaffrey came back. For me, I'm in first now, Matt. One game up, baby. And we talked about talking trash. I've been talking trash in fantasy all year because my team, if I don't talk trash now, I'm not going to have any chance to talk trash at the end of the year. People are like, why are you talking trash? It's like week 6. It's like, what are you going to do? Like wait till you win the entire league and then talk trash? Like you just have 15 weeks of silence or however long the season is. Now 17 weeks of silence. Like it's like church. You're there just making your things, praying to God. Like, please don't let my guys get hurt. And at the end of the year, you talk trash for like what, one day? Like, no, that's not how fantasy works. You should be getting in people's heads. I keep trying to trade. I got a Baker Mayfield if you want a quarterback, Matt. Slightly used. I'm sticking with Matt Ryan because Baker Mayfield last year, I think he was top 5 in points, and I got him, talked about him on the show. Their offense looks like trash. I mentioned it. I did flip a coin, which I sent you a video. I think I sent it to you too, where I was like, do I play Peoples-Jones? Because I picked him up, flipped the coin, and it stayed on, keep him into my lineup. And so I went up, and I'm like, this isn't going to work out. But then he caught that long touchdown, and it did work out. I think because Mike Evans was out, so I had to flip if I was going to play him or Agnew from the Jaguars, which, look out now, Matt. How many NFL guys are talking trash on Urban Meyer now? None. None. Because who would have known that Urban Meyer is a good college coach and a good NFL coach? And if his stuff starts to stick, look out. Remember Nick Saban failed in the NFL. So everyone that's saying like Nick Saban's the greatest coach, it's like, no, he's not. Everyone knows he's not because they saw him with the Dolphins. Like, it's not like Urban Meyer went to the Steelers, like a program that has history of winning. And he's like, hey, I'm just here, we're going to win. And that's going to happen. He went to the Jaguars. So if he can turn them around, I don't think Nick Saban ever made the playoffs. So all Urban Meyer has to do is make the playoffs. Make the playoffs a few times. If he wins the Super Bowl, look out. Because then I wouldn't even have him in that discussion. The college coaches can say like, Nick Saban this, Nick Saban that. It's like, no, he didn't win at Michigan State. I mean, Mark D'Antonio had a better career at Michigan State than Nick Saban did. And then he went to LSU, got lucky that one year, bounced, went to the Dolphins, didn't have success there. He lost to like Louisiana Monroe at Alabama. He's only winning now because he gets the number 1 recruiting class every year. I mean, Matt, that's the facts. Look at how many undefeated seasons did he have with that talent? Not that many. He always at least drops a game. He dropped one this year too.
But that's because he's in the SEC and it just means more there.
Oh yeah. Remember how that Florida win was such a gritty win? The SEC, that's a quality win for them. Florida keeping them close. Florida's trash. They just fired half their coaches. It's like, I joked with you about Florida State, but I honestly felt like Florida State had a chance to run the table. And now they lost to Clemson. If they would have won that game, they could have very easily been in the ACC championship. But, I mean, now they're looking at, they have to win it, I think, to be bowl eligible. And at the beginning of the year, everyone would have said, oh, they're going to lose that Florida game. South Carolina killed them. South Carolina's not even really that good. So Florida State probably will beat them. Like, I think Dan Mullen completely lost the team. I don't know if firing your coaches right now can get that around. I know that he was mentioned as being on the list whenever Michigan was hiring Harbaugh, I think, that year. Unless he was earlier when they hired Brady Hoke. But he was at least mentioned for the Michigan job, and it's like, see? Like, you want to fire Harbaugh now, you're going to get a Dan Mullen? Like, he's completely imploding. You're going to get a Sarkisian? Because Texas hasn't looked good. I mean, and then they were like, but Sarkisian's still our guy. It's like, how many more weeks until that falls apart? But we'll stick with the NFL stuff here. Steelers, I was worried because they let Justin Fields get back in that game. And then it was like, they were like, oh, the Steelers gave him too much time. But then the Steelers gave the ball right back because they couldn't convert on that third short down. Because and I don't think it was this one. I think it was a run that didn't make it. But how many plays I have to watch the Steelers run on third and short where the tight end goes and doesn't cross the first down line? Like, why the hell is he catching it 2 yards short? It's maddening. I watched Harbaugh do the same thing at Michigan. It's like, bro, run to the sticks. All you have to do is have your guy run a route that's 3 yards, not 1. And I watched it whenever the Bears are making their comeback. I don't know if it was Freiermuth in the flat, but he was immediately stopped, and I'm like, why? Why would you throw that? And it was like a 2-second pass. It was like a 1-step drop. So like that was the call. I don't know if he just ran it short, but it's like, Ben, come on, buddy. At some point, you should have just threw it in the ground and walked off the side and been like, Coach, what the hell are we running? We're running a 1 yard out when it's 3rd and 3 or 4th and 3, whatever it was. So annoying. I hate that. Put that in your coaching book. Everyone watching the game's like, why run short? Run a play where the guy gets the first down and all he has to do is catch the ball. Like, why? I understand if it's like 3rd and 30 or like even like 3rd and 9, you're running a screen, but not 3rd and 3 or 4th and 3, whatever it was. But they still hung on to win. And so now they're moving forward. Like, I honestly have more confidence now than I did a few weeks ago. The Titans are still winning. They have like their committee thing going. I'm not really sold on them. And of course the Bills just lost to the Jaguars. So as you look around the AFC, I don't see a team that's a world beater. Like, honestly, I thought by now the Bills would be separating themselves a little bit better. And like, luckily Baltimore's been playing all close, fluky games where it's like, okay, I'm not really worried about them because who knows what the hell they're doing. So maybe Ben Roethlisberger has a chance. I don't know if they'll win the Super Bowl because they still have to play maybe Tom Brady. But looking at this schedule coming up where they have the Lions, the most Steelers thing right now would be them losing to the Lions. Let me just write that down. Recent Steelers thing. Not like old-timey where they win those games all the time. Like Ben Roethlisberger in his twilight years. Mike Tomlin not winning a playoff game in 5 years. That's the kind of loss that they would have to the Lions on Sunday. So do you think that happens?
I think they blow them out of the water just to spite you.
No, man. That's not how the curse works. The curse worked because I was so negative on the Braves that they finally won. They were like, they can't. The sports gods were like, this guy is saying Houston's going to win because they're known cheaters. We'll prove him wrong. We'll let the Braves win that one.
But look at the way that they're winning. Like, the games that they've won are like blowing 26-point leads.
Like this week.
Going beating a Seattle team that doesn't have a starting quarterback and like has no offense. Like, they're just like limping through these victories.
That's why it makes me feel like every team's doing that. So you beat the Lions and then you play the Chargers and the Bengals. Bengals are blowing their own season. It's like, doing the Bengals thing early this year, I see. Not waiting till the playoffs when they lose that first round or whatever. But like, you win that one, but you play Baltimore. That's like, all right, that's a rivalry game. You could pull that out. Ben hasn't looked terrible. And I know like the receivers and stuff. Claypool, they're moving him around a lot more. So I like that. And then they even had a segment where they're talking about Matt Canada and all the new terminology he's bringing. And they basically said that he put in the run game during that game. I don't know if you caught that clip. So, of course, Ben's still running like his passing game. but Ben did say that the running game needed to change, and so he's welcomed that change. So there is some change on offense that they let Matt Canada make in regards to the running game.
I'm glad that the coach was allowed to have some input.
Well, I don't know who was commenting last night, but they were like, you would think that Ben would just tell him to use his terminology. Like the new coach coming in, and Ben's like, here's the names of the plays. I wrote them down for you. It's like, and I was thinking, like, that guy honestly believes that. He believes that Ben Roethlisberger should write the plays and name them, and then just let it go. But
well, I will say this: there's a play that we have that when I try to name stuff, like there's a learning purpose to my plays, and there's one in particular that is completely out of sorts because for whatever reason our kids can't remember any of the plays, but they remember that one.
Is it the passing play, the one passing play you have?
Yeah, that one. No, it was a running play. It was our crisscross, and I tried to have all of our counters have to be named after C words, and I changed it, and then the quarterback would just go in the huddle and call it, and the kids would look at him weird. So then he would just say, like, he would convert it from whatever the C word was to Xavier again, and he would come back and be like, because it was like crisscross, so it was XX. That was the original name. I tried to change it, and they were like, "No, that's not going to work for us." It's like, no, why are we ruining this?
You should have. I don't even know what you could do in that scenario.
You just you do what Matt Canada does. You just go. Can't believe that playing in the NFL for 40 years, a kid just accepted it for something else.
Yeah, Ben, I'm new here. They told me you know the names of the plays. Write them down for me. But that's the NFL media. They probably were told that. Like, Mike Tomlin probably told him to write that down. Like, hey, yeah, tell him Ben didn't even use his plays this year. They changed them for him. So, but he did say there are a lot of young guys. I don't know. They could win out. I mean, looking around the league, like, I don't even think there's a solid team that I would look at and say, yep, that's Super Bowl. I mean, you really have Tom Brady. The Cardinals, Kyler Murray gets hurt, which I've been saying. And then I talk about, like, hey, Kyler Murray might not get hurt, and I cursed him on the show. Because didn't I say that he has, like, the least amount of hits, they said?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, he's not going to get hurt, and then he's hurt. It's like, okay. Oh, perfect. Perfect. So you people that think that I'm not cursed, I'm cursed. I'll talk about it. Who you playing against in fantasy? Like, my team right now, hanging on by a thread. McCaffrey comes back. Sam Darnold breaks his shoulder bone or whatever, so he's out. It's like, all right. So now who's going to be throwing McCaffrey the ball? But Darnold couldn't even throw McCaffrey. McCaffrey should have had a touchdown. Darnold had at least 5 passes batted down at the line of scrimmage. Like, bro, what are you doing? He's wide open. Just float the ball. Why is it getting batted down? You're throwing it to the end zone. Like, I didn't understand what he was doing. And then everyone's making fun of him for seeing ghosts or whatever because he made that comment. And then they got killed by the Packers or Patriots at one time. So it's like, I don't know what the hell to think about that. But let's see. We talked about Aaron Rodgers. I think that's pretty much all I had for the NFL. Sam Darnold, he has an incomplete fracture of his shoulder blade. So, like, he's not going to be back. PJ Walker from the XFL, right? He'll be this team's starting quarterback. They're going to play the Cardinals. I don't know if Murray's back yet. I know they said that this is what gives me hope for Derrick Henry because Russell Wilson's finger, like, completely shattered in the game. And you could see him, like, trying to pull it back in place, and he couldn't even get it back in place because the tendons are probably all messed up. So he had that surgery. He's supposed to be out for, like, a couple more weeks, and they cleared him to play. So I know he doesn't run on that finger, and I think it was his non-throwing hand. But I'm like, Derrick Henry, please come back. I don't know when our playoffs start, week 15 or so. So if you can come back week 15 or even 16, maybe if I make it that far, I would love to have you back on my team because my playoff running back squad is going to be pretty thin. I ran Carlos Hyde out there last week. Didn't really work out for me, but I made up with it with some other great GM calls on the flip of a coin. We'll see what I can get going. But if I win the division, I'd be so pumped because I'm losing every tiebreaker because every time my team has a high scoring week, the next week someone gets injured. I score like 70 points and our tiebreaker is total points. So there's like, I'm like 6-3 now. And every time I win, like I have a solid point scoring. All my losses are like just so low scoring. It's like, no chance of winning a tiebreaker. So I need to just win out. I guess I have to win them all. Like the Major League. I know people don't watch anymore because it has a weird team that doesn't exist, like that fake baseball team, the Indians or something they called them. But there's a line in there where he says, let's just win the whole damn thing or whatever he says. So that's what I'll have to do. So if you want fantasy tips, come to me. This week I don't have any. I'm out of options. I'm just running on fumes right now. I wouldn't get Henry's backups. Like I said, I think I said that on the show. Peterson looks old. And then the other guy, he was like -1 halfway through the game. Like he lost so many yards, he just lost a point. It's like,
well, you figure when they're signing guys off the street that are 70 years old, that doesn't bode well for your current roster.
Well, that's why, I mean, they keep winning, but it's like, yeah, they're just throwing the ball now, but everyone's just going to be focused in on it. With Henry, that's why everyone's like, now they're saying, well, he might not come back this year. It's like, hell yeah, he's coming back this year. He had a broken foot. He's out like what? They said it was an easy, successful surgery. He should be back in 6 to 10 weeks or whatever. Why would he be out for the season? He's going to at least come back in playoffs unless you're thinking that they're missing the playoffs. Because if you didn't, why wouldn't you? Like, what else is going to happen? Unless they think he's going to just sit around eating burritos or something and getting so fat that in like 10 weeks he comes back and he's like 300 pounds and can't run. That would be the only way. But I mean, realistically, he could still ride a bike. And I mean, they probably wouldn't want him to put too much pressure on it. But he could do pull exercises too. Like my man, David Johnson did that one year. He got hurt jumping out of the pool to show everyone he's back. Like, do that. Do that. Come out. That's what I want to see. I'll start making gifts, dude, if it happens. That Undertaker gift where he comes out, I'll make Derrick Henry busting out of that. Taking my team to the top. That's what I want. So that's all I have for the NFL. You have anything?
No.
I know. Some people talk about what I talk about it for fantasy, so I don't even know if we should talk about it on the show, but no one ever complains about it. So who knows? It's more personal. People probably think like, yeah, I watched the game for that guy. But you hear some of the things where they like talk about this stud guy and like how he's going to be great. Like the Falcons, they had their one receiver. What's that guy's name? Matt Berry was talking him up all week. I watched someone in our league pick him up. He had like 1 point. I think the guy who played had him. And I was like, you sad sap. You believe that? About him being the number one wide receiver filling in for Calvin Ridley? It's like, yikes. So you have to be careful because the NFL lies about their stuff. You got to keep your ear to the street. Figure out who, like I have the wide receiver from the Bears. I know everyone's like high on Allen Robinson, but I got the other guy for cheap. I don't even remember his name. Number 11. He had like 2 touchdowns yesterday. And they were like, yeah, the only guy that would stay after practice with Justin Fields is that guy. That's how I draft my guys. Because the quarterback has to kind of like the receivers. Same with like Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams. They're like best friends. Devontae Adams was heartbroken whenever they said that Aaron Rodgers was going to leave. And so that's how you know that like if OBJ lands there, he's not getting any fantasy points. He has no connection with Aaron Rodgers. Do you think Aaron Rodgers wants another diva? It's very apparent that Aaron Rodgers wants the attention on him. Have you seen his commercials? That's why, like, he could come to Pittsburgh and it'd be perfect for him. Perfect situation. Mike Tomlin doesn't like the spotlight anyway. So don't write that out. Don't roll that out, Matt. That could be a match made in heaven.
And don't speculate that Mike Tomlin's going to college.
Yeah, well, Ben Roethlisberger had that USC glove. Did you see that? He wore like USC gloves to practice to taunt him. That's the kind of quarterback. That's how I know that Ben's feeling loose, Matt. If he can joke around about that, he has good vibes about the season. It's not like his arm's about to fall off. So, college stuff. I know. Just to end the show on a little bit, I mentioned Scott Frost. He's getting the Jim Harbaugh deal, where he's taking a massive pay cut. I think they said that it was in half. I don't know if you saw the terms of this, but just to recap, last year with the coronavirus year, Jim Harbaugh had to sign an extension, and they went 2-4, and the rest of their season was like canceled. And so he took I think half his pay was like cut, and they redid it it was like all incentives, where like he can earn his payback if he wins the Big Ten, if he makes the playoff, if he wins his bowl game. Because I heard some rumors where Harbaugh was saying like the bowl games didn't matter. I'm like, bro, no wonder our record's shit in bowl games if that's what you think. Like, you actually have to have the team prepared. But I'm hoping that like he was completely misunderstood there. But knowing him, that's probably wrong. But now Scott Frost, everyone was saying how even Feinbaum said that Harbaugh wouldn't even last the entire year because he signed that deal. But I'm wondering if schools are going to start signing these more because look, it's been very successful for Michigan. They're basically tied right now for the most successful Big Ten program this season. There's no undefeated teams left. They have one loss, just like 2 or 3 other teams in the league right now. Ohio State, Michigan State, and Michigan. They're clear front runners. Now the season, like I said, they could falter down the stretch. I don't think. I have high hopes. They play Penn State this week. It's on the road. Has Harbaugh shown he can win on the road? No. They did kill Wisconsin earlier, and everyone wrote Wisconsin off. But guess what? Wisconsin's 6-3 now, and they're ranked in the playoffs. I don't have the updated rankings up yet, but I don't think they would fall after being ranked last week. But looking at that game and seeing how Nebraska, they could have upset Michigan this year. Michigan had some bad plays, and they had to come back and score late to win. So maybe Nebraska's AD is looking at that and saying, like, we're close. How many games has Scott Frost lost like that was less than 1 score? A lot of them. So what better way to just give him a pay cut? It's worked so far at Michigan. I think it was like unprecedented at that time, or at least to have success. Maybe it's happened in the past and everyone gets fired. But like, I would rather have that happen where it's very clear that like you have Harbaugh fired Don Brown. I think Scott Frost fired most of his assistants. You're bringing in new staff. You're still a big enough name that you can recruit nationally. We like your recruiting. It's doing very well. We have to wait and see because it's clearly hurt Michigan this year in recruiting coming up. Like early signings, they are further behind this year than what they normally are. In terms of, I think they're like around the teens. Normally Harbaugh already has them like as a top 10 class. But I think the pay cut definitely hurt in recruiting. Nebraska hasn't been anywhere near the top 10. So how is Frost going to recruit now? Where it's like he's not even winning games. Like Harbaugh has been ranked in the playoff rankings multiple times at Michigan. Frost has never been, to my knowledge. I don't think he's been to a bowl game there. So like just to look at both sides of it where it's worked at Michigan, but Harbaugh had success before the coronavirus year. Like they hadn't lost more than like 4 or 5 games a year. I think 4 was the max. I don't know. I'd have to look at it. But then Frost is on the opposite hand where they haven't even won more than 5 games. So it's like complete opposite scenarios. If it works with Frost though, if next year, let's say the Nebraska takes a big jump up, I think other schools are going to look at this deal and say, that's what we need to do. Like why wouldn't Florida do this with Mullen? I mean, they liked his success. Would you rather just completely start over? Like, look at Florida State. How many coaches they're going to churn through? I mean, they're close. Like I said, it looked like they were turning the corner. They lose to Clemson. What if they lose another couple games? Like, they have a tough schedule closing out. What if they don't win another one? Do you, like, just throw your hands up? Or do you work a deal like this? Because I think ADs see this. You're going to get some money back. You can build some stability in. And you can bring in younger coaches and maybe start to turn the tide and get some other like connections going for the next coaching search anyway. I don't know. What do you think about this?
I think for someone like Scott Frost or someone like Jim Harbaugh who's been at the program for a while, I think these kind of deals keep the coach there, which is important, and maybe gets the the dogs off your back. But I think in the long run, I don't think that it's going to be a winning model, because if they're willing to do that kind of contract, the boosters and people who are impatient and expecting automatic success are still going to be there, regardless of what that pay cut is or what the pay rate is. And they'll say, oh, well, he's on this temporary deal. It's just one more. We're just delaying the inevitable, and they're going to push to get him canned. So I think, like, even if Mullen does that, like, I think you have to give. It ultimately becomes a game of allowing coaches the time to do the things that they need to do. Like, when you see the teams that struggle, and we talk about all the time on here, when you're impatient and you're just like, oh, we just have to hire, Matt Campbell from Iowa State, or we have to hire whoever.
Campbell, you mean?
Yeah, that's what I said.
I thought you said Canada.
No. Well, you could sign Matt Canada too. He just won't stay for very long.
I could be losing it.
But, like, there's always certain coaches that come up for every potential deal. And you push through those, and it's like, do you want to chase the next coach every single time, or do you just get some continuity with who's there? And the coaches that have been in the playoffs recently are coaches who have been at the program for a while.
Well, I'll say this. I wonder if some of this came from the TCU opening. I can't remember if we talked about this on the show or if it was after. When we talked about them firing Gary Peterson, or Patterson, they were looking at Sonny Dykes. Texas Tech hired someone completely different. They hired Baylor's assistant coach, Joey McGuire, which, to be honest, I hadn't even heard of. And he's supposed to be really good with, like, recruiting and high school coaches in Texas. So we'll see if this takes off. But I think at some point, like at Texas Tech, recruiting is not going to matter. You need a coach like Mike Leach that can innovate there and actually win, because Texas recruits way better than you. How are you even recruiting at their level even going to matter? Texas can't even win the Big 12. Like, hiring a coach just for recruiting, unless you're one of the big boys, like if Michigan hired a guy for recruiting and then they were pulling in like number one classes that competed with Ohio State, then I would say, okay, well, that doesn't matter, because then Michigan can pay out the ass for like the best assistants to go with that model. Like, look at Georgia. It's basically what they're doing. Texas Tech isn't going to do that. How are they going to get assistants then too?
Well, I think honestly, that's more of the model that Alabama's showing works with Saban, where he has a system in place and then just bringing this carousel of coaches in.
Yeah, it works. And if you can recruit at that level, but they still have losses. You can't tell me if he switched places, like recruiting places with Clemson, do you think he would have the success he's had? I don't think so. Because he's still like, however many stars, like blue chip ratio, he's like 10 percentage points above like LSU, and he's still like in Auburn, still losing to them. Like, I know he's won a bunch of championships, but at that point, you're bringing in the best coaches. You have the number one recruiting class. Great model. I think that's why his tree fails everywhere they go. Like Sarkisian comes into Texas. They have the monkey guy on the staff for recruiting. They have like all that other stuff. And guess what? When you just have coaches for recruiting, you don't have the analysts that Nick Saban has. He has like legit head coaches that have failed out in his booth. Like Bill O'Brien. Like, Texas doesn't have that. So just because you're recruiting better doesn't mean you're going to win more than 4 games or whatever Texas' record is. But breaking down the Harbaugh Frost thing, I didn't know how long Frost has been there. Frost has only been there 4 years, Matt. His best finish is 5th. I mean, on the other hand, Harbaugh's been there, I don't even know how many years, 7 now? This is 7th year. He's finished tied for first in the East, where they lost that tiebreaker to Ohio State that year. He's finished 10th, 11th, 14th, and 19th. So 4 of those years, I guess he's been there 6. This is the 7th, so we don't know. I mean, they're ranked in the top 10 right now. So he's had four seasons ranked at the end of the year. His worst record is 8-5.
But I'll say this:
it's like that's totally different. Frost hasn't even won more than 4 games. Or no, if he went 5-7, that's his best record.
Okay, so using Harbaugh as an example, say Michigan fires him. What coach do they bring in that truly moves the needle, knowing that Ohio State is going to be the competition, and that's going to be the standard for which they're going to be measured with?
Well, I mean, Ohio State brought in Ryan Day, and I don't think anyone expected them to continue at the level that they are. And like I've mentioned before, I think you're seeing some of the cracks in their team now. And I think you see the same thing at Oklahoma with Lincoln Riley. Once you start to get a couple years away from a legendary coach, Bob Stoops, Urban Meyer, I think those cracks become more and more apparent. Hell, look at David Shaw following Harbaugh at Stanford. If you remember, there was a time where everyone was saying, like, Shaw might be better than Harbaugh. But as you get further and further away, like, these coaches, I mean, Ohio State and Oklahoma are already at the top. So, like, them dropping a couple games and not winning, getting blown out, like, playing close games on the road and stuff, like, even at home, it's like, that's not very Ohio State. Like, I know Urban Meyer had his issues, like, with 1 or 2 games a year. It's tough to keep the kids focused. Like, you understand that. But what happens? Like, if Ryan Day leaves then? Like, who are they going to get that would really create a splash? So I think it's the same for Michigan, where I think they could have a lot of excitement with getting some guys. Like, I just wonder, would they try to get a guy from the Big Ten? Would they go for a recycled guy? Maybe like Purdue's had success. You can get Braum, you can get Fleck from Minnesota maybe, or do you go for like Matt Campbell and see like what you can do for extra resources? That's kind of just where, are you going to build that program? Because like Tressel built Ohio State up, then they brought in a legendary coach to elevate it to the next level where it stayed at. Oklahoma had Bob Stoops come in, keep it at that high level that they had been at. Lincoln Riley's kept it going, hasn't had the success that Bob Stoops had. Everyone's expecting them to fall off. I think going to the SEC is going to accelerate that tenfold. Like squeaking by games with Kansas, that's not going to fly in the SEC. And what happens then? Is Lincoln Riley even a hot coach anymore? Like, and then who's Oklahoma going to get? Like, they're going to fire him and then start the Nick Saban carousel like everyone else in the SEC? I don't know. But like Michigan's doing the same thing. You're not going to get a big time splash hire because Harbaugh was that hire. And now you're supporting him, giving him them incentives. At some point, he has to make those changes. Like, you got to do something with conditioning if your team is always dying at the end of the year. Can't have so many guys beat up. Watching the Indiana game, I saw a lot of injuries again.
Well, I almost wonder.
So it's like what's changed?
He's brought up a couple different times. I wonder if any of these bigger Power Fives would ever go after Monget, Army's coach.
I don't know, just because of some of the offense stuff. Like, I think he might be, and I wonder like what would happen if like in Iowa State loses their coach. Like, where do they go? And I think that's where you might see that happen. And hell, Rutgers or someone could probably make that move. If Shiano doesn't work out, which it seems like he might have a couple wins here or there, but like it's not like back in the Big East where he's going to compete. Like his best bet is if Penn State loses James Franklin. If we're being honest. That's what Shiano needs. Or he needs Ryan Day to kind of leave and further disconnect them. I also wonder how much this is the first year where you really see some struggles at Ohio State. It's also the first year without having Urban Meyer in the building. If Urban Meyer continues to have success at Jacksonville, how much further does that drive that? Because like Oklahoma, Bob Stoops still hangs out with them. And he still cheers for them in the booth for Fox. Kind of annoying. Like he was saying like we and all this stuff, and it's like, all right, we get it, bro. It's like, here's a picture of me at practice. It's like, all right, we get it. You want to coach again, but you're like tied to Oklahoma or something. But like, yeah, if you're USC, like, and you're really faltering, why not reach out to Bob Stoops? He's right there. I think Fox's booth is in LA. But I don't know. That's my big thing with the Big Ten. You have Scott Frost taking a pay cut. isn't really going to make a difference because even Mel Tucker lose to Purdue. I mean, we talked about it last week. I talked about it with Michigan State didn't look like they were the better team than Michigan. The Big Ten comes out, admits that they had the call wrong. Michigan should have kept that touchdown. And then Mel Tucker makes a comment saying like, oh yeah, I don't make complaints about the officiating. It's like, bro. And then he made a comment like, hey, I don't make call out about officiating. But there was that one late hit on my quarterback. It's like, you lost by 11. What the hell is the late hit going to do? Like the call that the Big Ten apologized for was an actual touchdown. They removed 7 points from the board. Like Michigan lost by 4. You put the 7 back up and they win. It was right before the half, bro. Like they're actual points that they just took off the board. It's not a late hit on a quarterback that's going to give you a miracle 12-point play to win the game. And so, I mean, Mel Tucker had a complete losing record. This might be his first winning year. Let's look that up real quick. And I hear a lot of talk about how like LSU would be lucky to have him and how all these people, but I almost wonder how much of a flash in the pan this season is because he got hot with transfers. He's not going to do that every year. No, he hasn't had a winning record. Hasn't had a winning record in the NFL, college until this year. His overall record now is 15-13 in college. So over 500, but not, and that's mainly because of 8-1 this year. His other seasons were 5-7 and 2-5, 2-3. He was the intern for Jacksonville. So at that point, it's like if he jumps to LSU, how do you know he's not going to get fired in 3 years? Just like Coach O. So if you're looking at making a move in the Big Ten, none of these coaches are safe. So why not keep Scott Frost? Like Mel Tucker could leave. He could be back to 2-5 next year. And everyone would be like, oh yeah, I guess he had that Heisman running back to carry his offense. Because the defense has still been getting outscored. I think they were outscored in 4 of their last 6 games, or outgained in 4 of their last 6 games. They went to overtime with Nebraska. Had the close win to Michigan at home. And I think the Nebraska game was at home too. Switch a couple of them to the road and I bet they'd lose. So I don't think Michigan State has a chance. I think the end of the season comes down to Ohio State. If Penn State beats Michigan this week, I think that locks it up. Ohio State plays Michigan State next week. I think there is 0 chance that Michigan State team goes into the shoe and beats Ohio State. I think the Big Ten had a chance at 2 playoff teams. They made the bad calls. They made that team Michigan State and they choked. If we're being honest, like that was the only way the Big Ten could get 2 teams in is if they would have had a 1-loss Michigan or Michigan State. And with their officiating, they made it Michigan State and it didn't work out for them. And I'm just baffled how the Big Ten doesn't have a guy in the booth that just makes those calls. Because any fan watching the games, and I watched some games this weekend, and even Penn State, they have to see it too, because Penn State, it seems like they're always on the bad end of calls. Hell, even watching the Steelers last night, how many bad calls went against the Bears for no reason? And I was watching, I was thinking, this is what it feels like to be on the other side, I guess. when your team's getting all the calls in their favor. And they still barely won. That is very Michigan State-like. I think it was 6-0. There were 6 calls that were controversial. They all went to Michigan State that game. So what's going to happen this week at Happy Valley? Penn State, Michigan, what do you have?
I'm still high on Michigan, and I think that with the potential rumors of Franklin being out, I think it leaves Penn State vulnerable.
Well, I will say they made it a nooner. So I don't think it's the big noon game because it's on ESPN now, which, let's be honest, the big noon, everyone makes fun of it, has had the highest ratings for like multiple weeks in a row now. So people like waking up and watching that Big Ten game at noon. It's outpacing the late night game because they have better matchups. That Michigan one's like one of the highest, if not the highest watched game. And then last week was Ohio State, Nebraska. Like, who's even wanting to watch that game? I mean, Nebraska kind of kept it close till the end. But you have that. So we'll see how these ratings go. Penn State hasn't looked the best. I think Clifford's injured. He's beat up, playing rough, and I think that kind of plays into Michigan's hands because, let's be honest, Michigan's pass rush is their defense. Hutchinson, the defensive end, Pro Football Focus put out this thing where they have like the Heisman players ranked, and they said that he should be on the Heisman watch list because of how many plays he's disrupted. But like, there's no way they're going to put a defensive end in the Heisman talk. I almost wonder, like, if Michigan would have gone undefeated, would they have invited him? If he's really that disruptive? I mean, he was the one that scored the touchdown they took off the board against Michigan State. Could have been his Heisman moment. Ruined. So, who knows? But the ACC, as I go through my Big Ten talk, I don't think Michigan wins on the road. I'm probably wrong. Who knows? Until I see a Harbaugh team come together and not get injured down the stretch and just fall apart, I'm not going to believe it. I don't think practices from him changed. I think they're still physical. I watched so many guys leave the field injured, including Blake Corum against Indiana, to not wonder, like, why is this happening again? So I think Michigan probably limps to the finish. I think Michigan State limps to the finish, and then it's a debate if one or maybe two loss Ohio if they do trip up against Michigan State. Because I could see Michigan State lose or beat Ohio State and then lose to Penn State to give Ohio State like a 2-loss Big Ten champion. That doesn't make the playoff. But maybe we'll get expansion out of it because that's what I want anyway. The ACC, though, they made their idiotic decision. Wake Forest, and I know we mentioned this earlier in the year, I thought it was Duke. So I think I said it was Duke on the show. Wake scheduled North Carolina as their non-conference game, as their way to like protest their divisions. So did you see this? Because this might have just been covered down here on the news, because I know the local news talked about it. So the North Carolina schools are kind of mad that they are split, and they're kind of like pushing either a pod, and I know you hate that, but I'm hearing it down here where like you can have the 4 North Carolina schools in their own pod: Duke, NC State, Wake Forest, and North Carolina. A perfect 4-team pod where they play every year and do whatever. I don't know what the hell they think the other pods would be, because I think North Carolina would have to be split up. The bottom one would be what? Miami, Clemson, Florida State, Georgia Tech, maybe? Is there another Southern team I'm missing? I guess I could look at an ACC map, because I know that they don't have exactly 16 teams yet. But I was wondering, like, if that's really what they're pushing. And they said that they were fine. What I'm hearing is that they're fine if they go no divisions. Because right now, pods don't make sense, like I said, because they don't have enough teams. Yeah, I guess that would be it. Those would be the four North Carolina schools. And then whoever you would add. Like, you would have to add teams in the North, I would think. Because adding another Southern team would throw it off. You would have to then split Wake Forest again, which is what they're bitching about. Like, who would you put them with? Like, if you added 2 Florida teams, you might be able to do a split with maybe Clemson, Georgia Tech, Louisville, and I don't even know who you would put in that division, because you don't want to split up Virginia and Virginia Tech either. Like, they want to be together. And so they're complaining down here. So they went out of their way to schedule each other as a non-conference game in the middle of November. So kind of I know they only play 8 conference games, so you're seeing what the Big Ten does when they have that idiotic 9-game conference schedule. You're just adding another chance for a loss for no reason. Of course, Wake Forest loses. Now the ACC has no undefeated teams left. It doesn't count for the conference, and now everyone's thinking that Wake Forest is even weaker than what they had expected. So I'm wondering, I'm going to look and see if the rankings, I think they came out tonight. Yeah, they did. Oh, of course, Ohio State's in the top 4 now. Got to slide them in there, Matt. Got to get them in there. Ryan Day, he's been really close to, winning it all. So you got to have him there. He might jump to the NFL. They have Oregon 3, Ohio State 4, Cincinnati 5, Michigan 6, the good guys. Oh, man, Sparty's going to be mad. They put Sparty at 7. And you would think that the head-to-head, but I'm telling you, the committee guys have even said that those bad calls if it came down to it, they would use that in their ranking, which I know I saw a lot of Michigan State guys posting about that, so they were pissed about it. But like realistically, if you're watching the game, you're going to be annoyed by that. Oklahoma's at 8. They have their toughest games coming up. I would think that they would jump the Big Ten teams. But it's interesting to see because I don't know if they're going to jump Cincinnati. Wouldn't it be funny if Cincinnati made the playoffs over Oklahoma as like the Big 10 rep or the Big 12 rep now? Because they're joining that conference as Oklahoma's on the way out. And they're like, Oklahoma, we already have 2 SEC teams in this playoff. We don't need you. Like, that'd be funny if that's the way the committee's thinking. Because maybe they are. Like, if you're being honest, it's ADs from other conferences. So, like, realistically, if the ACC is looking at it and they're like, why the hell would we have Oklahoma? And they're going to be joining the SEC anyway. Let Cincinnati play for it. Oh, man. They have A&M at 11. Wake Forest at 12. So, A&M, 2 losses. I mean, come on. Give me a break. Ahead of Wake Forest. So, that's your chance for the ACC. They have Wake Forest and then NC State at 16. Which NC State has the big game at Florida State this week. Who do you think wins in that one?
Florida. Well, it depends on how many guys Florida State gets back because they had like a gazillion guys out last week with the flu.
Which is another crazy thing because I saw that going around and it's like, what about, did you get your guys the flu shot? Because I was wondering that because they made a big push about the coronavirus and I hate talking about this stuff because people think it's political about like the Aaron Rodgers. I hope I played that pretty neutral. I mean, I just given the facts on that one. But, I mean, come on, the flu's like a real thing. They have a shot for it. I got it. Because I was like, there's no way that you're going to have like a non-chance of getting sick whenever most people have been in their homes for like a year or two. Like, I just don't think like for college kids, like for it to spread, that's very rare. How many other seasons do you think? Like, do you remember having multiple teams? Because Florida had the same issue. How many teams do you remember losing because a bunch of their guys were out with the flu? Never for me. Like, I can't think of a year where that happened.
Yeah, I don't know.
So it's going to have to be something. Oh, no, wait. Did they play? Or Florida State plays Miami. What the hell? What schedule am I looking at? Dude. Or am I looking at the wrong week? What week even is it?
It is Miami this week.
Oh, who does NC State have then? I thought I looked at it. Oh, no, NC State plays Wake Forest. That's who it is. Sorry, I got my weeks mixed up. Oh, yeah, NC State beat Florida State. That's what oh, shit.
Yes.
Dude, I'm losing it. I'm not even going to cut this from the show. People can see that I'm losing on the show. So, yeah, I think Florida State would have has to win their last 3 games now to make playoffs. I was thinking that they still had to do, or not playoffs, bowl eligibility. They have to beat Miami, Boston College, and Florida. I was thinking it was NC State, Miami, and then Florida. I forgot Boston College was in there.
This is a big game for the Noles. They got to win.
Well, if they beat them, Miami's pretty much done. I mean, Pitt has the tie-breaking loss to Miami because didn't they lose to Miami? Maybe I should look this up because my mind might be gone at this point. Too much celebrating the Braves win, Matt. My mind is gone. 26 years waiting for that. Did they beat Pitt? Yeah, they did beat Pitt. I knew that one. So that's Pitt's only loss in the ACC. Miami would have that tiebreaker. Pitt also still has to play Virginia, which is that this week. No, they play North Carolina this week. So they're coming off a big win. Pitt plays Virginia next week. So I think in 2 weeks we would know if Pitt's going to be the de facto winner or not. Because they would beat Virginia. And if Miami drops another game, that's it. But you think that they have a chance?
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like the last couple weeks they've played competitively. So anything's plausible.
So that's my scenarios, and I guess we are going long, so maybe I am going crazy. So we'll wrap it up. I think NC State in Wake Forest, this game's going to decide the Atlantic. NC State already has a tiebreaker over Clemson. Clemson still has to play Wake Forest. If Wake Forest can somehow beat NC State, remember, they don't have a conference loss, and they had already played most of their conference games. So they play they play NC State at home before they go to Clemson. So they play at Clemson and then at Boston College to end the season. If they beat NC State, even if they drop to Clemson, I don't know how the tiebreakers will work out. It might be a 3-way tie, but I would think that they were in. I would like to see not Clemson in the ACC championship game. I don't know. Even if they got rid of divisions, you're still going to have the same 2 or 3 teams fighting it out. Like it's going to be Wake Forest versus like Pitt. Would they rather have Wake Forest versus NC State? I mean, I don't know how, if you got rid of the divisions, how it would be any difference this year. Maybe they were just looking at how the ACC got 2 teams in last year, but I think that was a fluke. This year, they're not even going to get any teams in unless some chaos happens. But like with Oklahoma sitting there with no losses, I just don't see them jumping in. But do you have anything else for the ACC?
No.
Since I was messing it up, I'll end the show there. I did have one thing for the final bell. We talked about Liberty possibly joining a conference. I said it was a mistake. It is happening. A bunch of those schools are joining Conference USA. I know we talked about it multiple times already during the season, conference movements. I am really interested in the topic, and we usually get a lot of big downloads with that show. When we do talk about them, I think I'm going to try to put it off though as the main topic until the off season, because we're kind of usually light on stuff anyway, and we can really break it down. But they are moving there, and I want to see that's not the last move. Was it JMU got promoted too? James
Yes.
Madison. So they're up and they're going to the Sun Belt, which is where Coastal Carolina and App State are, I think. So they have natural rivals there from before. But we're going to hit on all of these later in the year, but I just wanted to make sure that we reminded people that it did happen, even though last week I think it was speculative. But we'll keep that up. Matt, you have anything for the final bell?
No, just check out the website and thank you for the support.
Yeah, we're getting close. I know I've toyed about having extra stuff come up through maybe with this off season and stuff. So be on the lookout. We'll keep you up to date if you follow the main feed here. So the Southbound Sports Show. I usually put all our stuff on this feed, and if we bring back separate feeds, we'll let you know. Possibly looking into doing some other spinoffs, even if they're just temporary, like bowl shows or something, playoff shows for the NFL, like we did a few years ago. But thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.